Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our final fellowship presentation. After a long week of several presentations, we're going to end with the amazing Nivatha. And Nivatha's got an incredible presentation for us. It's been a long year and an incredible year for all of us, and you're going to get another opportunity to learn from another one of our fellows. So Niv is joining us today from Montreal, Laval, Quebec, the unceded territories of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. This is also the location of her startup Dispersa, which forms the core of her community of her initiative. So just quickly, I'm going to introduce myself. I will be moderating today's presentation. My name is Raj. I am a McGill graduate and part of the 2021-2022 fellowship cohort. I was also part of the 2020 and 2021 cohort, which was cancelled due to COVID. So these final fellowship summaries and presentations are 2 beautiful long years in the making. Today, we'll be summarizing some of our key learnings and experiences during the year-long fellowship, and we will be having the pleasure to introduce Nivatha Balendra. As the founder and CEO of her own CleanTech company, Niv, as many of us call her, has had a mega year, both personally and professionally. And today we get to learn a little bit about what she has been able to accomplish and how she has been able to continue her growth. So just some basics. Today's presentation will be about 20 to 25 minutes, followed by 20 to 25 minutes of question and answer period, which I will moderate. Please note that this presentation is being recorded. So I'm going to introduce our fellow here, Niv, and talk a little bit about her initiative. So Niv is a McGill grad with a Bachelor in Science in Physiology and in International Development Studies. Although she started Dispersa, her clean tech startup, during undergrad, the idea at the heart of her company stemmed from a CEGEP science fair project. Back in 2013, Niv discovered novel types of microbes that produce soapy compounds called biosurfactants. These biosurfactants are natural alternative to synthetic surfactants, an important ingredient found in soaps, detergents, and other everyday products we use. As a cancer survivor as well, Niv wanted to contribute towards creating a safer and non-toxic ingredients for society. Her love for science, coupled with her passions to create socially impactful solutions, led her towards entrepreneurship. Niv and the team are building Dispersa to contribute towards a greener chemical industry. For her fellowship initiative, Nivatha was focused on environmental and social impact within the Canadian CleanTech sector by establishing an impact arm within Dispersa, the Canadian CleanTech startup. Specifically, this included proposing a regulatory framework that would encourage adoption of clean technologies, such as Dispersa's bio-ingredient technology. Such a framework would help distinguish greenwashing from a real sustainable solutions. As well, this impact arm would include community-based initiatives to help bridge the gap in underrepresented groups within the cleantech sector. This program provides interested youth with mentorship and career growth opportunities to establish themselves within the Canadian cleantech sector. So they will be sharing her experiences for the year, but Niv is one of the most incredible people that I've met, and one of the most humble individuals that you will ever get a chance to meet. Niv is always juggling a million responsibilities and is also one of the busiest person I know. I was in the privilege of being in her triad group, and Niv is very busy. But like I said, she's also humble, and Niv was nominated as 6 women leaders for the Women in Clean Tech Award, which is a $1 million grand prize for Canada's most promising female clean tech entrepreneurs. So she's had an amazing few years, and it'll be exciting to have her join us. Just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. So a reminder that through her presentation, we encourage you to make comments and ask questions in the chat box or comment section of either Zoom or the Facebook live stream. We'll be watching these feeds and collecting the comments and questions, and we will then moderate a question and answer period following the presentation. If you're joining us on Zoom, a quick reminder, please make sure your microphones are turned off and cameras are also switched off. And should you have any connectivity problems or technology concerns, please let us know via the chat box. So Niv, if you're ready, without further ado, I'd like to hand over the stage to you, and good luck.
I was trying to unmute myself there. Thanks, Raj. Thanks for the kind intro, really appreciate it. And really excited to be sharing what I've been working on with all of you. So thanks for everyone who joined today. So my initiative was called Bridging the Gap in Clean Tech, and I'll be delving further into it throughout the presentation. But first, starting with a table of contents. So this is basically the main aspects that we'll be going through. So just to give a bit of a guiding tool for the discussion today, I'll first be going into the why, then talking about the community. The partner vehicle, as Raj mentioned, is Dispersa, the objectives that I had at the start, and then key milestones and pivots or challenges that came about, and ending with a development piece. So starting with the why, when we look at not only Canada, but globally, right, there is an evident diversity gap in STEM. And I think this is something that definitely impacted me personally growing up as a kid who was always, at the time, really curious, loved sciences, but never really saw myself in other scientists or role models out there. Thankfully, I had a very encouraging environment, parents who always pushed me to grow in the direction that I wanted to, but it isn't always the case for all underrepresented children or youth growing up. And so that was definitely something that motivated me to keep pursuing this field, and then to develop this program that would ultimately be able to provide more equitable access and opportunity and resources that are really catered to underrepresented groups to help bridge this gap. So that's actually a picture that I took, I think, back in 2012, actually. And this was when I was in CEGEP and I was doing my science fair. And this science fair project is what ultimately became what Dispersa is today. So a little piece about underrepresented groups, right? And so in the initiative itself, I was focusing mainly on women, youth, as well as BIPOC youth and LGBTQ communities. The importance there for me as well was to make sure that those who felt that they were underrepresented in STEM or in clean tech had a voice and had an opportunity to participate. It's quite outstanding, though, when we look at the tech sector. Only 5% of Canadian tech companies are founded by women, and even more within clean tech, which of course is a smaller filtered sector. Only 1 out of 10 clean tech companies are led by women. So you can start to grasp the lack of diversity in this field, and this was really the goal of this initiative to address this issue. So that moves on to the clean tech community. So what is clean tech? So this is basically a sector that is made to transition towards low carbon economy or renewable economy. Clean tech is actually one of the top exporting industries of Canada, so it's quite an important industry. However, it is ranked #1 in innovation. So we're really great at innovating and coming up with ideas, most often at the lab scale. However, what is currently needing of strengthening is the commercialization aspect. So this is where we have a lot more companies or spin-offs that come out of universities with the regard or with the goal of developing these clean technologies. And this is where we see the most amount of gap in terms of diversity in the clean tech sector. And this then brings me to the next point, which is clean tech is a highly tech-driven sector. It requires niche and skilled labor, so naturally If you look at the STEM fields, already there's quite a lot of diversity gaps. However, if you go even more niche within something like CleanTech or degrees or education needed for these types of programs, there's even less women and BIPOC or LGBTQ youth that are involved in these programs. So that's really what we need to target to create more representation in the field. So as we take a deeper dive into the community, as we take a look at Canada as a whole, so from a bird's eye view, this is really how the CleanTech community looks like. So there are mainly 5 players. We have industry, academia, government, investors, and SME. So Dispersa would be an SME. But what's really nice is we work together in this consortium. It really is and really takes a community to build an initiative like this. And ultimately, we lean on each other in order to develop each of these aspects and to improve the clean tech ecosystem. So as we delve further in the specific community, that's Laval, which is where I'm located. The picture that you see here is actually where Dispersa is located. So we're in the little brown building that you see there. And this is called the Biotech City. And why I felt that this would be a good place to leverage as well as grow the initiative is for when we had our startup located here, but it's also a really vibrant tech community. So we'll be able to match with other stakeholders in the regions, give lab tours and networking opportunities for youth to really explore and understand not only what Dispersa is doing, but maybe what other companies are doing in the broader tech field. So that brings me to the partner vehicle. Here is Dispersa. So I know I mentioned this several times. So what is Dispersa? It's an early stage startup that I founded about 2.5 years ago during my second year of undergrad. Dispersa is a clean tech startup. Our goal is to make the chemical industry more green, more sustainable. And we do that by transforming food waste into these soapy compounds. These are ingredients that are found in everyday products that we use, like soaps, shampoos, conditioners, and even non-consumer products like oil and gas, agriculture, and more. And so our goal is to create the same functional ingredients, but without the added harmfulness of the toxic components that go into producing such chemicals. So here are just a few pictures of our team. I'll be sharing more milestones later on, but on the left, this is over the last year. This is our Dispersa team. We're 7 and growing right now. We're hiring for more people, and each of them come from different roles. And one thing that I'm really proud of is that our tech team is fully women-led, and they're really incredible and highly intelligent women who are really fueling the development of the technology at Dispersa. And in the middle there, you see that I'm with Sarah, who's our CTO. And she's someone that I met early on and really was the first teammate that I grew this journey with. And then what you see on the right is our pilot reactor. So essentially, think of it like a beer vat, and you're fermenting these molecules. So they're a huge stainless steel device, and this is a 150-liter one. And then we move on to ones later on next year towards 10,000 liters. So you can only imagine the scale as we grow the technology. So specifically to the initiative that I came into the Pathy Fellowship with, were set on these 4 main goals. First is to gather data on the community needs from the partners. So the stakeholders that would truly be involved in shaping this initiative and shaping that mentorship network. So these are the quote unquote mentors that would be working hands-on with the participants. The goal 2 was to do the same exercise, but from the opposite end, working with participants, and these are the target youth groups. So we were mainly aiming for youth age 12 to 17, underrepresented groups. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, one thing that was really important for me was to not define what underrepresented meant. I mean, one thing that I really wanted to make sure was that I was not bringing my own biases to these initiatives, and to really allow for the participants to feel welcomed, and then to create a space around that. And then goal 3 was focused on the other aspect of the initiative, which was the framework. And this is to discuss with the same stakeholders as in goal 1, but this is really more related to the technology growth and overall eco certification of ingredients. So what that looks like is currently, when we're looking at products that we have on our shelves at local grocery stores, you might notice a green label, but not everything that has a green label is actually good for the environment. It might be biodegradable, but it's not sustainable. And here we are as Dispersa, and we're only one of many startups that are creating truly sustainable ingredients. However, there's not a program that truly demarcates what we're doing from what's already out there. And that really contributes to a lot of greenwashing. And that's one of the main focuses of this program that I was proposing, is to create a separate policy adoption that would truly incentivize and encourage the adoption of these amazing materials, and from other companies as well, to be able to advance and propel our development towards sustainable materials as a community. And goal 4 was to collect the feedback for this framework and to work together with the stakeholders in developing a policy adoption proposal. So this is our rough timeline. And so when we started at the beginning of the year, my first goal was to gather around the stakeholders from Canadian CleanTech ecosystem that I worked with, or that I felt might be inclined to be involved with this initiative. So this again goes back to that previous diagram that I showed. So we reached out to investors, as well as government, academia, and other SMEs, other founders, other technical founders who would be able to form a real diverse set of mentors for the youth. One thing that was really important for me, though, in this phase was to understand what from the mentor side, they felt that was lacking in the community or needed strengthening. And a few interesting takes for that. Of course, unanimously, everyone was super interested in being involved, but oftentimes, especially when it comes to something like marginalized groups or underrepresented groups, it often takes some more discussion to understand what exactly will be useful for these underrepresented youth, right? How could we create a program that is truly useful and will benefit them in the long term? So it was quite interesting to have those discussions with the stakeholders, because they were all ready to help, but didn't know where to start. And so we really felt that this program would be a strong foundation for something that can continue to grow beyond the fellowship. Goal 2, onto October, after doing that mentorship network creation, and of course these are all goals that will continue, so these are really a handful of mentors that we have, and then we continue to populate it as we go. So goal 2 was to conduct interviews and focus on the youth participants in the same fashion, getting feedback from them and understanding what they felt would benefit them in the future as they grow their initiative. And then going on to goal 3, it focused really on aligning the framework. But as you can notice, there was a pivot, and I'll be getting into that in the next slide. So as I was building the initiative more focused towards the youth participants, what I realized is that this is something that is going to take more time, especially if we're going to be creating a corporate social responsibility branch within Dispersa, and not something to be rushed, and definitely something that we needed to put the pillars in place, hiring the right coordinators to grow this even beyond the fellowship. And so this was continuing to grow in parallel as I started focusing on the second bit, which was goal 3, and that was the regulatory side. This also aligned with the framework for Dispersa's growth. We are scaling up our ingredients. We felt like this was a gap that would definitely not only help our growth, but equally so many other bioproduct companies who are also scaling and needing encouragement within the government policies for adoption. And then going on to May 2022, we're actually wrapping up our proposal, and within a few months going to be proposing it at the provincial government level, as well as municipal, to get their thoughts on how this regulatory framework could pass and be able to be proposed then, hopefully, at the federal level as well. So talking about the pivots and challenges, a lot of this had to do with what I mentioned previously. So as we're growing Dispersa on one avenue, the Pathy Fellowship, of course, takes its shape around the youth program as well as the framework. And these are just a few realizations that I had throughout the program. For one, gathering the data from these focus groups in a very meaningful manner and developing that structure takes time. It's not something that I wanted to rush. And I also wanted to make sure that we were creating a solid network of mentors that would be there in the long term for the youth. These are programs that are going to last between 6 to 12 months and even beyond after a student graduates, quote unquote, from the program. So we want to make sure that there are mentors that will be there in the long haul and making it as diverse as possible in terms of the fields they're coming from. The third aspect was recruitment. And so one of the main goals was to hire a coordinator to co-build the CRS initiative. Naturally, as the CEO of the company and our existing team already having their specific responsibilities, it was really important for me to make sure that there was a teammate that I can count on who would really take the baton and run with what we've built to date, and then be able to do even more, and then to work with them together. But hiring a coordinator and then onboarding them on everything that's happened as well is also time intensive, and that's something that we're working on moving forward. And fourthly, the alignment. This is quite important, and I will be getting into that later. The initiative definitely had to align with Dispersa's growth as well, and the framework took precedence in this aspect, ultimately not ignoring one or the other, but just because as we're scaling our ingredients, we also need to make sure that this impactful tool can be accessible for other companies. And by creating this type of policy adoption at the government level can be quite huge in terms of the impact it can have within the biocertification landscape for the CleanTech community. So in terms of key milestones, these are both linked to Dispersa, which ultimately will be fueling the revenues that will build the CRS initiative beyond. Over the last year, or I should say nine months since the fellowship started, we secured over 1 million in funding. We have 2 paid client partnerships with our very first clients in the cleaning product space. So we're testing our materials with them. And we have 20 other clients in motion. So these are probably some of your favorite products that you're using, clients that are manufacturers of consumer products in North America and Europe, for example, who are really interested in adopting our materials. And one thing that I'm particularly proud of is the fact that we got our process out of the lab and into a pilot production. And that means that we're actively producing our materials in small scales for these client partnerships, and we're going to be ramping up production. And these are just a handful of our partners that we've been working with to date. Here are our materials. So they're kind of like a powdery substance, and then they can be integrated into formulations and or diluted as a liquid. And a few milestones that we had over the years. So in the first picture, we see Sarah, so that she's next to our bioreactors. So that is our 2-liter reactors. And then what I showed in the previous picture was 100 liters. So this is how we scale step by step. Second picture there is Pyle, our teammate, and she's explaining the structure of our surfactants from a chemistry standpoint. We also have quite a lot of team bonding activities, work hard, play hard. So that was in the summer. The other one about the semi-finalists is quite exciting. So we were actually, Dispersa was named a semi-finalist in the Food Waste Reduction Challenge. So because we're converting food waste, we were eligible for this challenge equivalent to the Women in CleanTech Challenge that Raj mentioned before. And so we're a semi-finalist amongst 15 other companies across Canada. So we're in partnership with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to scale our technologies. Another aspect that we worked on and really built in with that community aspect is the hand sanitizer project. So we wanted to give back to the community in some way. So we took it upon ourselves to make hand sanitizers, and that's technically our first product that we churned out of Dispersa. So we applied for all those licenses, etc., and we donated it to a cancer center, as well as a shelter as well. And so that's a few of the things that we've been working on as well in parallel. So last but not least, in terms of development, like I guess one thing that I found was quite important over the last 9 months was balance. Balance was key. Juggling a startup as well as an initiative is definitely not the easiest, but I've always been passionate about merging both realms, the for-profit and non-profit. Like, I don't think it should be exclusive to one another. So naturally, the reality of building a startup is that there are ups and downs, and so sometimes are more intense than others. We're in our fundraising, for example, and it's probably one of the most intensive periods for any startup. And then it was also an opportunity where, especially working with the Pathy group, so Sarah, Adam, and Jess, lots of time for pausing and reflecting. And I truly feel like those are the moments that we can really hone in and to understand our personal growth and what it is that we want to work on, or to really craft that balance. And another important thing that I feel like I learned over the last 9 months is boundaries, or the importance of boundaries towards maintaining that balance. And so establishing those silos definitely increases efficiency in those personal times. And while there are a lot of things that I would love to be involved with, it's also about really understanding the boundaries that exist between each of those bubbles to be able to commit to each fully. And another thing that, we often had a lot of chats about with Sarah was authentic leadership. And as someone who is leading a clean tech company and a diverse founder, minority founder myself, it was really important for me to not lose myself as I was growing the company. I wanted to stay true to my way of leadership, which I feel is really important in terms of leading with empathy. And so there was a lot of strengthening on that side in terms of how to maneuver that over this period of building the initiative, while also building Dispersa. So with that, my presentation comes to a close, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Nev. It's awesome the work that you've been doing at Dispersa. There's some appreciation from some of your fellows, and I'm sure they're all looking forward to hearing more about it over the next few weeks. Next week we all get to come together and discuss our fellowship, so that's going to be lovely. So we'll now be entering into a quick moderation for questions. So if anyone has any questions from anything to do with Nev, her initiative, or her fellowship experience, please feel free to enter them in the chat. I guess I'll start off with one. I wanted to ask you, first of all, it's incredible that, I mean, it's 2022 and that science fair project is 10 years down the road. It's 10 years before. So the progress that you've made in 10 years is amazing. I'm curious, what do the next, I know it's hard to look at, but what the next 5 years or the future looks like, both for Dispersa as a company, for the CSR wing, which I imagine you would like to make it a larger part of Dispersa, especially as resources may increase. What's your vision? What do you see for yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for the support, and thanks, Raj. So it's like you said, as Dispersa grows, it provides even more fuel for the CRS initiative. And so that's why it was really important to intricately balance both in hand. For Dispersa, We have a lot of plans lined up for this year. I think primarily for us is scaling up our technology, which is really exciting. If you think about it, we're producing these materials, but we want to produce more of it so we can start selling it to clients. And the moment we start selling it to clients, they put it in real formulations. And so I think the ultimate vision for us is one day going to a grocery store, picking up a product and saying, hey, those contain our ingredients, right? And we're not too far from that. And I think that that's what's really exciting about what we're building right now. The vision is we're focusing on cleaning products and personal care products for the moment, but the amount of applications that biosurfactants can have is even greater. So one thing that we're looking forward to is diversifying into other industries, like agriculture, for example, where we can really use these bio ingredients as an alternative to harmful chemicals like Roundup, for example. So these are things that we have planned up in the future. And in terms of the initiative, one thing that we're closing in on now is hiring that coordinator, and that way they'll be able to really take the baton and run ahead with all of the data that's been collated and building out our first program and launching that so that the participants we've interviewed and participants that we have collected can benefit from the program that we're creating. You're on mute, Raj.
Thank you, Niv. So I have a question here from Jess. The frameworks and foundations for both the environmental and social impact you've started this year at Dispersa is incredible. So she has an appreciation for you. I'm sure these foundations will continue to build. It's uncommon for startups to be thinking of how to build and incorporate these into their structures right from the start. Could you talk a little bit more about the youth you engage to support the development of your social impact framework? What do you envision this program looking like once implemented after the interviews and feedback you received? And did anything surprise you about what the youth said?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jess. So I'll go bit by bit. So the first part of the question, could you talk a little bit more about the youth engaged? Yeah, so the focus of the group was really mainly high school students. We did accept a bit of SAGEP students depending on just to get feedback. I think it was really important for us to know, are we missing out on an age group that actually would benefit from this mentorship program? So how that looked like is we had about 20 youth that are from 12 to 17-year-old. And then from the SAGEP group, we had about 8 to 10, I would say. And so the group, how it looked like is we were collecting interviews, so focus groups, really like anonymous style. One thing that we wanted to make sure is that we had a safe space for them to talk openly. And why I'm saying that is, I think, linked to the second part of your, or third part of your question. Oftentimes, especially in the underrepresented youth side, there are challenges that they face personally, and this space is supposed to create a safe environment where they can openly talk about what these challenges are, and only once we understand these challenges could we actually create a program that really meets their needs, right? And so I think I'll go to your third question, Jess, because I feel like it might flow with what I'm saying right now. So the challenges that they expressed, and some were surprising, some were not surprising, just because I also come from a minority background. So I do know friends in this situation as well, for example. So some youth expressed how, they have to finish school, or sometimes even struggle to finish school because they need to be the breadwinner in the family. They need to work, they need to contribute to the finances of actually affording either their own tuition or supporting their siblings. Maybe their parents are actually out working multiple jobs, and so they need to take care of their siblings at home. These are realities that exist for a lot of underrepresented groups that are often missed in this discussion. And just little nuances like that makes a big difference in how we create a program. if you expect students to be coming regularly in a program and they're, struggling with babysitting their siblings or having a job or multiple jobs to also support their family, it's not realistic. So I think that's what made it a bit more complex, is how could we create something that is beneficial for them and to help them kind of come out of that vicious cycle. Because what this was to show youth an opportunity that, you can pursue what you want while also not neglecting your family priorities. And I think that was really important.
That's awesome. I had a follow-up to that. So when you do work with your youth, in this youth engagement context, do you share a lot of your story and your journey? Because I'm sure for them, knowing what you've been through and knowing that you're a minority working in women in clean tech, like, does that really resonate with them? Does that like impact them in some ways?
Yeah, I think it's really nice speaking to them. I think a few of them I kind of got connected throughout my trajectory, or some youth that actually reached out to learn more about my trajectory in the past, and so I felt that they might naturally be interested in a program like this. But I also wanted to make sure that for me the main focus was listening to their stories, right? And I think that was the most important thing. I was happy to help and to provide my trajectory, but I think what I also found was really important to differentiate is everyone's journey looks so different. Everyone's lives look very different. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. Oh, just because this is my journey, it doesn't mean that someone else's journey will be exactly or even similar to what it is that I've done. And so I really learn a lot from them. And I think that all of this data is really important equally for the mentors to be aware of before they even get involved. Because the last thing that I want this program to be is like a check mark on their CRS list of a large corporation saying, we're involved in a youth program like such. It's even more so they're actually making a difference in the lives of students, and we really need empathy and a lot of understanding and openness and vulnerability to understand what they're going through and how to best help them.
Awesome, thank you. So I have a question from Sarah, and she said that I love what you mentioned about the importance of authentic leadership. What were some of your own challenges you faced while learning to embrace yours?
Thanks, Sarah. So Sarah and I spoke quite at length about different styles of leadership, and obviously as a minority founder, there are a lot of challenges or hurdles. For example, just in terms of the interactions, whether it's being underestimated, questioned, or overly criticized, overlooked. These are often challenges for minority founders or minorities in general in underrepresented sectors like STEM or clean tech, for this matter. So a lot had to do with how could we change that discourse and continue to be the leader that I want to be without losing that sense of self and being true to one's empathetic leadership style. And so, yeah, I mean, that was often also interrelated with the discussions you're having with the youth too, right? Because I think the lack of role models as well plays into that. And oftentimes our first question is, what are the challenges that you face as a minority in this sector? And it definitely shouldn't stray away anyone from it. I think the more familiar faces we see, the more that biased individuals in the sector will also feel more relatable or understand that that we are here to be represented, and I think that is really important.
Thank you, Niv. So you have an appreciation from her, and here she says that both the work you do at Dispersa and your strong, diverse, and empathetic approach to leadership are just incredible. I think she's the second person who's wondering if you're looking to hire to help in your lab after Joel, of course.
That's true. I see Joel on the call. Thanks,
Um,
Lauren.
so I do have another question. So I like obviously from working from the startup, I know a little bit about that, but I'm curious about the teachings from the initiative, from the fellowship themselves. So we learned a lot about ABCD. We learned a lot about personal care, our personal learning journey, our leadership styles. And I'm sure as a CEO, you have your plate full of knowledge and you know how to run a company and how to reach your bottom line and your production. And so there's two very different, you know, knowledge centers to work from. So I'm curious how the teachings from the fellowship over the year helped you, or how you were able to adjust them or modify them so that they fit your context. It's a different context. So I'm curious there.
Absolutely. Well, believe it or not, I think when we started the initiative, I did feel like they might be different ideologies or different ways of thinking. But when we look at things like the theory of change or the MEL, ultimately there is equivalence to all of this in the business world too. You know, as we're developing these initiatives, oftentimes it's very common to have focus groups, interviews to understand the community needs. That's very similar to the business aspect where we interview customers to understand their needs. So a lot of the learnings I feel are very cross-sectional and are not just exclusive to the fellowship or exclusive to the business. I'm someone who really believes that diverse thinking and learning different concepts is useful to having a more open mind and being able to apply different concepts to different fields. Yeah, I wouldn't say that anything was drastically different in my opinion. I found that they were quite complementary, if anything.
Awesome. And then I guess one of my last questions would be, I'm curious about your personal learning journey. You talked a bit about balance, and I remember speaking to you during the first month in August FCC, and we talked about how like you want to get more balance in your life, maybe play more sports or do this and that. I'm curious, were you able to balance this, and were there any changes in your routine or your like in the norm before the fellowship that changed during the fellowship? Maybe reflection, journaling, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that, well, before the fellowship, of course, it was already really busy with Dispersa naturally and
Yeah.
building a startup. And when undertaking the initiative, I am just someone who really likes to be committed to what it is that I'm undertaking, and it's something that I care so deeply about. And I think ultimately the importance is really balance. And some periods are more intense for Dispersa, which ultimately means that, you know, that balance needs to be reset. But I've made it a point to carve out time. So that importance of carving out time can look very different for everyone. But for me, what that'll look like is weekends are meant for, you know, just friends, family, spending time on the self, and also side note, planning a wedding in all of this too. So it's you know, really the moment that can be dedicated to all of that. But you know, I go for gym training like 4 times a week now. I've gotten back my balance to where I wanted it to be, or where I was before the pandemic. And I think a lot of that also has to do with things opening up naturally. And during the pandemic, a lot of the gyms, etc., sports centers were closed. Yeah, it's definitely a nice experience. I find that allowed that kind of reset on the clock, and then looking forward to continuing that beyond the fellowship.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you, like a strong part of this this fellowship, obviously you are engaging as a mentor, but a strong part of this fellowship was also, connecting us with mentors, more experienced in different age groups, but people who've been through something. And as a minority myself, I find it really important to have people who've done similar things in a similar context that I can hold, high regard. So I'm wondering, were there any mentors that helped shape you and how you, your year, and like, did they have any influence on you? And yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that my surrounding advisory board are made of multiple people. So I don't necessarily lean on one person for support. But I think it's two things, right? One is you're building a board for Dispersa, but another thing is building your own personal board. And having a personal board is very different from having one for the company, because ultimately mentors are very different from advisors, right? Mentors are not there to lend their expertise necessarily, but to lend a hand and to share, how they've met challenges and to help through that as well. And so, I mean, one particular mentor that to this day continues to support me even through Dispersa is actually Dr. Eric Deziel, who was the mentor who opened his lab when I was 17, right? None of this would have been possible if he didn't believe me as a 17-year-old and, opened up the lab, gave me full autonomy to go in and out of the lab and develop these experiments, right? And so I think, yeah, thanks, Jess. I think that having a personal board of directors definitely helps. And for me, that looks like people who are complementary to the business, but also people that I can learn from. And it is an up and down. It's a roller coaster ride, right? Whether it be you're setting up an initiative or you're building a startup, and so having trusted individuals that you can speak with who understand the reality is important. So there are a few of my mentors who are women or who do come from a similar background as me. And so been able to open up with them slowly about these challenges that we've been facing. And I think it's been nice to hear, obviously how they've went through similar scenarios and going forward.
Awesome. So maybe a few more questions for you. I may have missed this, but I was wondering, do you plan on offering internship offerings or any sort of engagement for either university students or high school students at Dispersa in any role, or is it too technical, you think?
No, absolutely. We've actually had interns over the last year, two, if I'm not mistaken, two interns, university level, but we're always eager to learn more about new candidates. Currently, we're hiring for 4 positions. I think two of them are part-time. So if anyone is interested, it doesn't need to be technical. It doesn't need to be technical, shameless plug, but there is a sustainability and regulatory affairs coordinator, for example, and it's not necessarily technical. Lauren and Joel, exactly. But we are hiring for those 4 positions right now. And if there are any students that are interested in interning, they're always free to reach out to us, because what's really nice is that there are a lot of programs available that help startups hire interns as well, which makes it easier for us. I mean, we're not at a shortage of work, and that's for sure. We need a lot of hands on deck.
Of course. That I hope people are listening there. Anyone out of a job after the fellowship, I'll redirect them to you. And I wanted to ask now, with wrapping up this entire year, obviously there's been highs, there's been lows. What's some of your greatest lessons or insights this year, and how they're going to impact you moving forward, in the story that is Niv, how this year will continue to shape her?
Yeah, absolutely. it's really hard to sum it all up in
Of
one or
course.
two sentences. I think the most important thing, the relevant to the last 9 months, I think, is oftentimes we're quite open to give grace to others and patience to others, but I think it's equally important to give that to oneself and kind of just look around to see where we are and where we're going ahead.
Okay. On that lovely note, thank you, Niv, for the great presentation today. Thank you for sharing your insight, and thank you for being an inspiration continuously to to everyone, not just in your industry, but like to women, to minorities, and paving a new path, especially in this niche industry. I'm sure it'll have impacts down the road, and congratulations for all you've done. I hope to see Dispersa on all hand sanitizer bottles that I have to use in the future.
Thanks,
So
Raj.
thank you for everyone who has come to participate today, and thank you for all the questions and the positive affirmations. So just a reminder that this call is recorded and will be available on the Pathy Foundation Fellowship Facebook group for anyone who'd like to revisit it, and learn more about what Niv's has done this last year. So thank you all for coming today. If anyone has any more things to say, they can message on the group. But this wraps up the final presentation of this week's presentations. It's been an amazing week getting to hear from all of you, and it's going to be exciting to learn more and more about what we've all done and accomplished this year. So congratulations to all of the fellows here. Congratulations on a long year, and cheers to good things ahead. Thank you all.